This weekend, I became the free Wi-Fi provider for an entire car show, out of the trunk of my old Pontiac. All I had was a battery pack, a pocket router, and a random Ethernet jack hanging on a pole. By the end of the day, though, there was a hotspot called Free Pontiac Wi-Fi hovering over my car and on everybody's phone. Today in Dave's Garage, I'm going to show you exactly how I pulled that off, how to use a pocket router when you travel, and then we'll take a look at a powerful new pocket router from GLInet, the Slate 7. Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. A year or so ago, I did an episode on travel routers that somehow ended up with about 1.4 million views. And in that video, I talked about what a pocket router is and why you'd ever need one in the first place. This episode is the practical follow-up. How to actually use one when you travel with some real-world war stories, plus a look at how the new Slate 7 fits into the picture as a Wi-Fi 7 touchscreen travel router. And just to be transparent, this time GLInet is sponsoring the episode. I bought my original Slate AX with my own money because I liked it, and then I liked it enough in the video that they saw the video and then reached out. So they sent over the Slate 7 and sponsored the episode, but as always, they have no editorial input or control. Let's quickly bring everyone up to speed on what a pocket router actually does. A pocket router, or sometimes called a travel router, is a little box with Wi-Fi and Ethernet that takes one internet connection and turns it into a private Wi-Fi network for all of your gear. Now, that one connection could be the hotel Wi-Fi, a wired Ethernet jack in the room, or tethering to your phone over USB, or even a USB cellular modem if you've got one of those. You log the router into the hotel or cruise ship Wi-Fi once, accept the captive portal once, and then all of your phones, tablets, laptops, Apple TV, Steam Deck, and everything else just sees your Wi-Fi, not the hotel's. So the hotel, it all looks like one single device. And that solves a bunch of real problems. Places that charge per device suddenly seem a lot more reasonable, and places that limit the number of devices suddenly aren't a limitation. Captive portals that don't work at all on Apple TV or a game console suddenly become a non-issue because only the router needs to actually talk to them. You avoid the flaky hotel Wi-Fi configurations, you get to use your own network name and your own password, and you can put everything behind one VPN without configuring VPN on every single device individually. So if your family has a half a dozen phones, laptops, and tablets, they all just remember your router, and suddenly everybody is connected as soon as the router is. So that's the basic idea. Now let me show you how that paid off in the wild. This weekend I was at a big car show at a convention center with my Pontiac. Like a lot of modern venues, the only Wi-Fi they offered to the general public was sponsored. You know the type. You connect to the SSID, get dumped into their captive portal, watch an unskippable video ad about some nonsense, click through a couple more pages, agree to some terms, and then you get a tiny slice of internet time and bandwidth. Go to the bathroom once and you have to do it all over again sometimes. That's annoying enough if you have a single device, but if you've got a phone, a tablet, and maybe a laptop in the booth, it gets old fast. Meanwhile, the vendors had a completely separate wired network, and way up on a concrete pillar near an electrical box, I noticed a lonely Ethernet cable just hanging there, patched into what I assume was their network. There was no power nearby, just that RJ45 cable. And this is where the pocket router earns its keep. I grabbed my travel router, in this case a GLInet Slate, out of my bag. I plugged that pillar Ethernet into the WAN port on the router. Then I plugged a USB battery pack into the router's USB-C port to power it because, as I said, there was no AC outlet anywhere nearby. But in about a minute, I had a private Wi-Fi hotspot centered around my car. And because I control the SSID, I called it Free Pontiac Wi-Fi. From that point on, I had real unrestricted connectivity from that wired jack, my own SSID and password, no captive portal, no ads, and no reauthorizations. Everything was secured behind the router's firewall. Everybody hanging around the car that I gave the password to could connect, or they could just scan the QR code, and the router would happily just run off the battery pack for as long as I needed it, actually. And that's really the point of today's episode. Once you understand how to use a pocket router, then hotels, convention centers, Airbnbs, cruise ships, even airplanes all start to look like different flavors of just WAN input that you can bend to your will. So let's talk about how to use a pocket router when you travel step by step. And the first rule of Pocket Router Club is do the initial setup at home. Don't be like Dave and set the thing up on an airplane using a battery pack and a MacBook. And do not try to set this thing up for the very first time at the hotel at 11 o'clock at night when the family wants Netflix. So when you're at home, you plug the router into power, connect a laptop or phone to its default Wi-Fi, and then go into its web interface. You set an admin password, then rename the Wi-Fi SSID and password to something that you actually want to live with. If you want to be fancy, you can change the internal LAN network so that it doesn't clash with your home router, but you don't have to. Do any firmware updates while you're on your known good home network. And from that point on, all your devices will know your travel router's SSID. They will connect to it automatically whenever it's powered up and they're on. Whenever you arrive at your destination, your job is to connect the router to whatever internet you can get. You're not connecting each device to the hotel. You're connecting the router to the hotel, and then everything else automatically connects to your router. If there's an Ethernet jack in the room, that's by far usually the best option. Plug that into the WAN port on the travel router. In most cases, it will pick up an IP address automatically and be online within a few seconds. Now, I'm not suggesting you start messing with the hotel wiring, but smart TVs are often hardwired to an Ethernet jack, so look back there for a spare port or perhaps a pass-through. In terms of bandwidth, a direct Ethernet connection is always going to be the fastest solution. How fast depends on the bandwidth available at the port. Assuming it's not throttled, 1 gigabit is going to be the most common. Here in the shop, I plugged the 2.5 gigabit WAN port into a 10 gigabit switch that's backed by a 5 gigabit Ethernet connection. So this was going to be a true measurement of the Slate's Wi-Fi ability. How did it do? Well, I was so blown away by the first test I did using SpeedSmart that I ran a second test with a different app, Speed Test, and I still got 2 gigabits a second over Wi-Fi, which is better connectivity than 90% of the wired devices in my house have. So suffice to say, the Slate itself is not going to be any kind of bottleneck for regular traffic. Now, if you're faced with Wi-Fi only, you put the router into repeater mode and have it join the hotel's Wi-Fi as a client. You then open a browser on your laptop or phone, go through the captive portal once, and it's happy, and then the router is blessed. Everything behind the router just gets normal internet from then on. If you're somewhere with no usable Wi-Fi at all, you can plug your phone into the router's USB port and turn on tethering. The router then uses your phone's data connection as the WAN link, which is great in airports, in the car, or when the hotel Wi-Fi is just too slow to tolerate. If you're a bit more hardcore, you can plug in a USB 4G or 5G modem and let the router share that connection. You can even set up multiple WAN options so that the router prefers Ethernet but can fall back to hotel Wi-Fi or phone tethering as the primary if one goes down. To all your devices, it still looks the same: your private SSID, your password, and a single stable network. Once the router is online, you just ignore the hotel Wi-Fi from that point on. Your phones, tablets, laptops, Steam Deck, Nintendo Switch, Apple TV, Roku, Smart TV, smart speakers, whatever you've brought with you, just connect it to your travel router's SSID. The travel router hands out IP addresses just like your router at home. To the hotel, it still looks like one device using the network, even if you have dozens of gadgets connected behind it. That's how you dodge per-device billing, avoid goofy captive portals, and deal with weird device limits while still using the connection that you paid for. It's in this multi-device setup that a good pocket router really adds value. After all, if it was just a single device like an iPad, you could just tether it to your phone, but there are some key differences. The iPhone can only share cellular, and it can't reshare Wi-Fi like the pocket router can. And it can't be plugged into high-speed Ethernet. The phone is limited to somewhere around 4 clients at once, best I could tell, and the phone hotspot will also sleep when your phone sleeps, lest it drain your phone if not plugged in. Now let's talk about where the new Slate 7 fits into this story. GLINet didn't position the Slate 7 as time to throw away your old Slate AX, you peasants. It's more like if you're in the market for a travel router, or if you want a more capable one that you can also use at home, then the Slate 7 is a feature-packed travel router with Wi-Fi 7 and a touchscreen at an affordable price. It's dual-band Wi-Fi 7, so it does Wi-Fi 7 on 2.4 and 5 GHz, but it doesn't have a 6 GHz band like some of the big tri-band home routers might. On paper, GLINet rates it up to around 680 megabits per second on 2.4 GHz and 2.8 gigabits per second on 5 GHz. You'll never see those exact spec sheet numbers in real life, but I did get 2 gigabits. But what you do get from the Wi-Fi 7 here is more efficient modulation, more bits per symbol, and features like multi-link operation that let it use both bands more intelligently. The end result is higher peak speeds, better stability, and lower latency, especially in crowded RF environments. If you've got a modern phone or laptop that supports Wi-Fi 7 or even just Wi-Fi 6, the Slate 7 gives you a bit more headroom and future-proofing than a Wi-Fi 5 or plain Wi-Fi 6 travel router would. It also has something you almost never see on a travel router: dual 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports, one for WAN and one for LAN. Most tiny travel routers give you one lonely gigabit port if you're lucky. With the Slate 7, if the hotel has a fast wired drop, you're not automatically bottlenecked by the router. You can still run at full speed, or up to 2.5 gigabits anyway. You can also use that LAN port at home to plug into a switch or a server and then treat the Slate 7 as a fast little home lab router or access point. And that's the other angle here. It runs GL.inet's firmware on top of OpenWRT, so you can install OpenWRT packages and scripts just like you would on a more serious router. If you don't travel that often, the Slate 7 doesn't have to sit in a drawer. It can earn its keep at home as a Wi-Fi 7 access point or as a router in your lab or a Wi-Fi extender and then go back into your bag when you hit the road. The other big change is the built-in touchscreen. I'll admit that when I first saw a touchscreen router, my first thought was, well, okay, that's a gimmick. But then I actually used it. The Slate 7 screen shows you big tiles for the different WAN types. Ethernet, repeater, tethering, cellular. They're color-coded, so green means online, yellow means it's trying to connect, and white means it's down. You can see at a glance whether you're really on Ethernet or whether you're still limping along on the hotel Wi-Fi. It can show you your Wi-Fi network name, the password, and a QR code that people can scan to join instantly. It shows VPN status, so you can see whether OpenVPN or WireGuard is up and running, and you can see real-time traffic and CPU usage. In a hotel room, that's actually pretty nice. Instead of, is it plugged in, or is it on, or what lights, what do they mean, is it the hotel, is it my laptop, you just look at the router and you know, well, the Ethernet's up, the Wi-Fi is broadcasting, VPN is on. And instead of getting into a fight with your wife or your kids as they fumble to incorrectly enter some long passkey that you're shouting across the room for the third time, you can just say, come scan the QR code right on the router. For quick adjustments, you don't even have to open up the web interface. You can toggle a VPN or check status right on the unit. If you're security-minded, you can decide how much of that you want visible on the screen. You don't have to broadcast that QR code if it makes you uncomfortable. But as a quality-of-life thing, it's surprisingly handy. Now, one feature that I always thought was incredibly handy, even on the older GL.inet routers, is the little configuration switch on the side. It's a physical hardware switch, and in the web interface, you can tell the router what to do. I usually set it up as a switch that turns the VPN off or on, but you can also use it to toggle Tor or kill the Wi-Fi or change modes or turn the hotspot off and on. In my world, that switch is basically the master VPN mode switch. When it's down, the router is using the hotel's venue or internet directly through the firewall without a VPN. That gives you lower latency and is fine for things like gaming or mundane browsing. When the switch is up, the router brings up WireGuard or OpenVPN, and now everything on that Wi-Fi appears to come from home or from whichever endpoint you've configured. You don't have to dig into menus or apps, you just flip a little switch. Now let's talk about VPN performance, because that's one place where the Slate 7 and the earlier Slate AX differ in an interesting way. Both routers now support OpenVPN with dual-channel offload, also known as OpenVPN DCO. That moves the heavy crypto into the kernel and gives you a pretty significant speed boost over classic OpenVPN. The Slate 7 with DCO enabled can do on the order of 380 plus megabits per second over OpenVPN and around 480 plus megabits per second over WireGuard in GL.inet's own testing. The older Slate AX with its newer firmware can hit slightly even higher speeds on OpenVPN, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 plus megabits per second. So technically, if all you care about is raw OpenVPN throughput, then the older Slate AX is actually just as good. The important point is that GL.inet did not make DCO a new hardware-only feature, and they sure could have. Instead, they pushed that feature back to users of the Slate AX and other existing devices via firmware updates, instead of reserving it as some new exclusive trick just for the Slate 7 just to drive sales. From a user-first point of view, that's exactly what you want to see from a company when you're investing in their hardware. So how should you decide between them? Well, if you already own a Slate AX and you've updated the firmware and you're happy with the VPN performance you're getting, you don't have to upgrade. You're not really obsolete, except now I'm kind of used to that display screen and it is hard to go back. If you're buying your first travel router or you like the idea of Wi-Fi 7, the touch screen, and 2.5 gigabit ports, the Slate 7 is a nicer all-rounder and still has plenty of VPN performance for typical travel use. The other VPN feature that's interesting in practice is the new multi-VPN policy mode in the latest firmware. So instead of just simple VPN on or VPN off for everything, you can define different tunnels for different devices or destinations. So your work laptop can be forced through your corporate VPN tunnel. Your Apple TV might go through a US-based commercial VPN for streaming. Your kids' tablets might go direct or maybe through a filtered family VPN. All of this happens on the router, so you don't need extra VPN apps on the devices themselves and no settings change on the devices. If you do a lot of remote work on the road, this is huge. You can be in a hotel in Europe, have the Slate 7 connect back to a router at home, and then have that router connect out to your company VPN. Your work machine only ever sees a stable, wired-looking connection, and the nasty hotel Wi-Fi is abstracted away. If you don't care about any of that, you leave it in the simple global mode with one VPN. But if you do appreciate this feature, this is one of those big router brains and a small travel router features that starts to matter. Let me walk through a typical hotel scenario with the Slate 7, just as a concrete example. You get to the room, you take the Slate 7 out of the bag, and you plug it into the power with a USB wall adapter. You wait a few seconds for it to boot, and the touchscreen lights up and shows you its main screen. If there's an Ethernet jack available on the desk, you plug that into the WAN port. Within a moment or two, you'll see the Ethernet tile go green on the screen, which tells you that the router has an IP address and is online. If there's no Ethernet, you go into repeater mode, choose the hotel Wi-Fi, connect, and then accept the captive portal once from your laptop. When that's done, the repeater tile turns green instead. You flip the little side switch up if you want VPN, and you wait for the VPN indicator to show that it's connected. You glance at the Wi-Fi page on the screen to make sure it's broadcasting the SSID that you expect. And at that point, you're done. Your devices connect to Dave's Travel Wi-Fi or whatever you named it, just like they do at home. Then you go on your next trip and you repeat only the WAN part. Connect to whatever the hotel gives you, the best you can get, and everything else just works behind the router because your devices already know the SSID. Now, if I can replay the car show scenario with the Slate 7 instead of my older Slate AX, it's basically the same story but with nicer tools. I plugged the Ethernet in from the pillar into the 2.5 port gigabit WAN port, hoping it's even faster, and I plugged the router from a chunky USB-C battery pack. I watch the touchscreen and I wait for the Ethernet tile to go green and maybe glance at the traffic graph to make sure that bits are actually flowing. I flip the side switch up to bring my VPN online if I want everything tunneled back to my house. But this time I set the SSID to Dave's Garage Wi-Fi in order to encourage folks to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and that's it. Everyone at the show sees a strong, stable Wi-Fi network coming from my car. On my side, I get my own firewall, my own DNS, no captive portal nonsense, and enough bandwidth thanks to Wi-Fi 7 and the faster ports that nobody complains. And once you see it used like that, a pocket router stops being just another little gadget and becomes more like a universal network adapter for your travels. So to recap it in plain English, a pocket router is how you turn whatever sketchy, overpriced, or limited internet you can get on the road into your own private, stable network. You connect the router to the hotel, to the conference center, or to your phone, or to that mysterious jack on a pillar somewhere, and everything else connects to the router. The Slate 7 takes that idea and layers on Wi-Fi 7, dual 2.5 gigabit ports, a touchscreen for quick control and QR code joins, and some surprisingly powerful VPN features that also benefit older models. If you already have a Slate AX and it's doing the job for you, you're fine. Keep it updated and keep using it. If you're shopping for your first travel router, or if you like the idea of Wi-Fi 7 in a pocket router that earns its keep both on the road and at home and in your lab, the Slate 7 is worth a serious look. Either way, get yourself some kind of pocket router before your next trip. Whether you're trying to get work done on a cruise ship or you just want to be that person offering free Pontiac Wi-Fi at the next car show, it's one of those tools that once you've used it a couple times, you won't want to travel without. Now, there's a couple of these features that I'd like to do detailed demos of and a few advanced features like Mac cloning that I didn't even get to cover, so let me know in the video comments what you'd like to see in a more advanced travel router episode, and if there's a big response, I'll do it. And tune into our weekly podcast called ShopTalk in order to see your questions answered. Link in the video description. And speaking of links in the video description, check out the free sample of my book on the autism spectrum. Remember, I'm mostly in this for the subs and likes, so I'd be honored if you'd consider leaving me one of each before you go today. In the meantime and in between time, hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.